Hi, in this video, I'm going to go over the topic of environments within Azure Machine Learning. So, in Azure Machine Learning, environment is defined as an asset which captures all of your software dependencies that you would need to either run your training jobs or to run your inference model inference as well. Okay, so this is described well in the Azure documentation. So if this is an image from the docs. So as you can see, right? So if in order to run a job, you would need the training script as well as the environment. So all of your maybe the Python dependencies that's needed to run your workload, right, would be packaged in an environment object, which you can use to run your job. Also, if you look at the other side, right? So here, if you want, if you also want to use a model for inference, right, along with your scoring script model and the compute target, you can also, you also need to pass the environment that defines all of your, dependencies. Okay. So in Azure Machine Learning, there are, two main types of environments that you can use. Okay, the first one is a curated environment. Basically, this is a set of environments that are pre-packaged by Microsoft and then made them available for use within Azure machine learning. So let's go to the Azure ML, right? So you can see the environments in the assets section here, right? So this is where you can see all the curated environments, right? As I was saying, right? So these are all predefined environments. You can just directly use them within your workloads. You don't need to rebuild anything, right? For example, you see these MLflow, MLflow Pi 312 inference, right? So this is again, just pointing to the Microsoft Container Registry. And you can see, right, so as I was saying, right, so environment is kind of packages all of your dependencies, right? So you see the Docker file and then the files that are part of this build context, right? So this is the curated environments. Okay, so you can directly use that within your workloads. Okay, and there is custom environments. So again, custom environment, there are various types of custom environments. There is system managed environment. So for a system managed environment, so if let's say if you want to use a Conda environment for your workloads, right, you can use a base image, and then you can point you can provide a Conda specification, right, the Conda YAML file, and then you can create an environment using it, right? So you need a base image for that. Okay. Then there is user managed environments. So there are two types of user managed environments that you can create. One is you can build your own custom Docker image, and then you can just point to it when you create the environment, or you can provide a Docker file with all of your build context, and then when you create that environment, the build job would get triggered, and then it does create a new Docker file and then push it into the ACR. Okay, I'll show you this in action with an example. Okay, so create a custom environment. All of them, all of those would show up here. Okay, let's go to the notebooks. I've created a folder called environments here, and then I've created a demo notebook just for this demo. So here, I'm using the default 3.10 SDK v2 kernel, okay, which already has the Azure ML, the SDK v2 package. So I'm importing the ML client, and then I'm also importing the environment and build context classes from the Azure ML entities. And then I'm using the Azure, default Azure credential class from the, Azure.identity package. Okay. And then I'm creating an ML client. I'm passing the subscription ID, resource group name, workspace name, and then the credentials. So I created the ML client. So you can use the ML client to go through all the environments that are available within the workspace. So here is a code that you can use to list down all the environments. Okay. So in the first example, I'm going to create an environment by passing the custom build context. Okay. So I have a folder created called custom environment. In here, I created a Docker file. So within the Docker file, I'm pulling the Python 3.12.12 image from Docker Hub, and then I'm copying the requirement.txt file. So I have a requirement.txt file which has the Azure AML and then Azure Identity packages, and then finally I'm running the Python dependencies here within the Docker container. Okay, so in order to create the environment, right? So you can use this environment class. And then I'm passing the name, version, description, and then I'm providing the build context here. Okay, so again, if you go to the Azure AML, the API reference, right? So you can see the environment class and all the parameters that you need to pass. Okay, I'm using the build context here, right? Because I want to build the entire Docker image, right? But if you are using a custom Docker image, like I was saying, right? So the custom Docker image, you can just pass the image details here. Okay, and then if you want to use a conda specification right on top of the base image, right? So you can use the image and conda file parameters, and then you can create a system managed environment. Okay, there are other parameters as well that you can use, like tags and other things. Okay, let's go to the notebook again, right? So as I was saying, right, I'm creating a user managed environment with the the build context, right? And then I'm using the ML client dot environments, and then I'm creating this environment. Okay, so when I run this, what it does is it uploads the all of these dependencies into a storage account, into the data store, and then it uses the serverless by default. It uses the serverless compute to run a job. Okay, so if you go to the job section, and then if you see the prepare image, okay, you see, right? So the environment creation triggered a job which is going to use the serverless compute. Okay, let's I think it would take some time to get the environment created. So meanwhile, let's go to the notebook again. Okay, we'll come back to that. So the other type of environment that you can create is you can just pass the Docker image. Here I'm passing the PyTorch latest image from Docker Hub. I'm giving it a name and the version number. Okay, so as I was saying, right, if you want to use a conda specification, right, a conda file, you can also pass it on top of your base image, and then so again, just make sure, right, if you have any Python dependencies, just make sure that they are part of the conda YAML file if you are using the system managed environment. Okay, but again, I'm not showing this as an in this example. I'm just pointing to an existing Docker image. Okay, so let me run this. So let's go to the environment section. Let's see if it created anything, right? So if you look at the top one here, right? So demo image build, right? Let's go to the notebook. That's the name that I gave here, right? It's demo image build. And if you click on that environment, it's actually pointing to the Docker Hub PyTorch latest, right? So again, this doesn't need any build, right? So it's just pointing to the Docker Hub image. So, but basically, this is the Azure environment. This is the environment that that got created. Okay, and then for the other one, right, where we provided the custom build context, right? So it is currently running. So this is still running. Let's give it a few minutes and then we'll let's come back. The job is now completed, right? Let's go to the environment section and let's click on the environment that we are creating, right? So click on this. So if you see this, right, so it says the build status is succeeded. So we were able to successfully complete the environment creation process here, right? Which is nothing but, another image build process. We gave the version number as 1, right? And you see these, right? So it's pointing to the Azure Container Registry, AML ACRKT001, right? So basically, this is the container registry that's associated with this Azure ML workspace. And within this ACR, it created this Azure ML, um, underscore 2AF, right? So that's the Docker image that got created, right? So if you look at this, you see the Docker image that got created, which is nothing but the environment. Okay, there is also a hash, that you can see. So the hash is nothing but you know hash is calculated by the Azure ML directly. So whenever you create a new environment with the same dependencies, right? It doesn't create a new Docker image. It just tries to point to the existing Docker image. Okay, all right. As well as, right, so if you go to the build log, you can see the build logs. So the way Azure ML built this image is, when you provided the build context, the build files got uploaded to the data store, the default data store, and then it's using the managed identity, the workspace managed identity, to run this build process and then push the Docker image into the container registry. Because when we provision the Azure ML workspace, okay, we also have granted a set of permissions to the managed identity. Okay, so if you look at the Azure ML, the Azure container registry, if you go to the check access, then go to the managed identity. So we have provided the Azure AI administrator as well as the ACR pull permissions to the managed identity. Okay, so because of these permissions, it was able to push the image into the container registry. Okay, you can also use the administrative password as well. So if you use the admin user, you can also, the Azure ML workspace you also uses can also use the admin credentials in order to connect to the Azure ML workspace and then push or pull images. Okay, but in this case, it is just using the managed identity and role-based access control to connect to the Azure ML workspace. Okay. Also, in this case, it used the serverless compute. But if if your resources are behind a private VNet, you can actually use a compute cluster within the Azure ML workspace to do this build process. Okay, so the way you can configure that is you can this is a sample code here, right? So if your resources are behind a private VNet, you can use a compute cluster. So basically you use a same ML client, get the workspace handle, and then you point your the CPU cluster that you want to use for the image build process, and then you run this command to update your workspace with the with this command. Yeah. So that way it can use the compute cluster instead of serverless compute to do the image build process. Okay, all right. So I was saying, right, so basically if you create a same environment with the same context files, it just references a different it doesn't do a rebuild of the image, right? So let's see this in action, right? So let's copy the same code here, and then let's give it a name as demo copy. Okay, let's do demo copy here, and then let's run this. And if we go to the environments, so basically what I did was, I'm just pointing to the same build context, right? Which has the same set of dependencies as the other environment, right? So let's go to the environment section, right? And then if we go to the this environment, you see it's pointing to the same Docker image that was built earlier, right? So it says already exists, right? So basically, Azure ML does do some checks before it starts building the image, right? It tries to reuse the Docker, the cached Docker images as much as possible, right? Versus building a new image if we provide the same, context. Okay. All right. So I also said that we can you can also see the jobs that's referencing this particular Docker image, particular environment. Right. Created this job example notebook. Okay. So what I would do is again I'm just importing the ML client command object. I'll create a simple job pointing to a data asset that we created in the earlier video. And then within the environment section, let me go here and then let me copy the Docker image build, the demo image build environment, and then pass it here, right? So let me run this job. Okay. And then if we, so the command, the job has started. And then if we go to this particular environment again, demo image build and jobs, you see, right? So you can see all the jobs that are that references this particular environment, right? So you have that lineage, within the environments as well. So you have lineage within the data. So if you use a data asset, you can see which jobs have referenced this particular data asset. At the same time, if you reference a particular environment, you can see which jobs have have used this particular environment as well, right? So you have that lineage with Azure ML. All right. I'll just skip waiting for the job to run. I was just trying to show you the demo here. Okay. All right. So basically, right, in this video, we have covered the environment topic, right? So we have built the two types of user managed environments. One is a Docker image, and then the other one is Docker file, right? And as I was saying, right, so this Docker any custom environments, right? So they use the serverless compute by default, and it uses the managed identity to run the build process and then push and pull to to push the image to the Azure Container Registry. And if you want to use a different compute, you can, like, if you don't want to use a serverless compute and if your resources are behind a private VNet, right, you can use a compute cluster again which is running which points to your VNet, right? So you can use that to run the image build process. All right. There are a few links. I would also share those within the description. Thanks for watching.